The floor feels cold against my cheek, the cheap laminate pressing a pattern into my skin. I don't remember falling. I just remember the sound, sharp and sudden, ripping through the manufactured calm of our kitchen. It was his scream. Not a scream of pain, but pure, unadulterated panic, a primal sound ripped from the gut of a man who thought he was untouchable. His phone slid across the counter, landing with a clatter near my head. The screen blazed with notifications, a relentless cascade of text bubbles popping up in rapid succession. Family names I knew flooded the display. Aunt Carol, Uncle David, Mom, Dad, Sarah, sister, Mark, cousin. And under each name, snippets of furious, shocked, heartbroken messages. Are you kidding me? I can't believe this, John. What I asked this? Explain yourself. His face, usually so composed, so certain, was a mask of horror. His eyes were wide, fixed on the phone, his mouth opening and closing wordlessly. He looked utterly, completely blindsided. Good. If you've ever felt the ground disappear beneath your feet, the sickening free fall when everything you thought was solid turns to dust, let me know where you're watching from and what time it is. And if you haven't already, please subscribe. It helps me more than you know. We had a life. It felt like a good one. We had the house, the respectable jobs, the quiet routine punctuated by weekend trips and shared laughter over dinner. John was charming, successful, the kind of man who filled a room without trying too hard. He had an answer for everything, a smooth explanation, a way of making you feel safe and cared for. Our relationship felt like a well-built ship, sturdy and true, sailing on calm seas. I believed in him. I believed in us. I worked hard alongside him, building our future brick by brick. My desires were simple: stability, love, a partner who saw me, truly saw me, and chose me every single day. I wasn't looking for fireworks. I was looking for the quiet comfort of knowing someone had your back, someone you could trust implicitly. John offered that. Or at least he sold it convincingly. He was my anchor in the sometimes turbulent waters of life. He was home. He was everything. I remember the night before it all started to unravel. We were sitting on the couch, watching a movie. He had his arm around me, his fingers tracing patterns on my arm. We talked about trivial things, plans for the weekend, something funny that happened at work. It felt normal. It felt safe. It felt like us. There was no storm on the horizon, no tremor underfoot. Just the quiet hum of a life built together, settling into its comfortable rhythm. I went to bed that night feeling loved, secure, utterly content. The world outside could rage, but inside our walls, we were protected. The first crack wasn't a loud explosion. It was a whisper, a late-night text notification. His phone was on the nightstand. He was asleep, or pretending to be. The screen lit up, a name I didn't recognize, followed by a string of heart emojis and something about missing him. My breath caught in my throat. A cold dread began to pool in my stomach. It was probably nothing, right? A work friend? A joke? He wouldn't. Not John. But the same name popped up again the next day. And the next. Always late, always coded messages. My mind, once a place of peaceful trust, became a battlefield. Suspicion was a foreign, unwelcome intruder. I tried to ignore it, to rationalize, to push it away. He works late, he's stressed, people send weird texts, it means nothing. I told myself these things over and over, a desperate mantra against the rising tide of unease. I started watching. Little things. How he held his phone. The quick way he would flip it over when I walked in the room. The sudden silences in conversations. The way his eyes would dart away. It was like a slow-motion car crash I couldn't look away from, but also couldn't quite see clearly. Every small anomaly, every deviation from the norm, became a mountain. Sleep became elusive, replaced by anxious thoughts cycling through my mind. The quiet hum of our life was being replaced by a high-pitched whine, almost inaudible but constantly there, grating on my nerves. The air in the house grew thick with unspoken tension. I felt like a detective in my own home, searching for clues, dreading what I might find. Every corner held a potential trap, every glance a possible lie. The man I loved, the man I trusted completely, was becoming a stranger, a figure shrouded in shadows and secrets. The easy intimacy we once shared was replaced by a guarded dance, a careful navigation around the unspoken. We were in the same house, but worlds apart. The moment of impact arrived not with a bang, but the soft glow of a screen in a dark room. I couldn't sleep. The suspicion had become a living thing inside me, gnawing at my peace. I crept out of bed, found his phone. My hands trembled as I typed in the password I knew. The screen unlocked, a Pandora's box of undeniable truth. There it was, a conversation thread, long and filled with sickeningly sweet messages, intimate details, plans to meet. Her name, the one from the late-night texts. It wasn't a work friend. It wasn't a joke. It was real. My world didn't just tilt. It shattered. Pieces of my life, my identity, my future, rained down around me. Each word on the screen was a hammer blow, crushing the foundation of everything I believed. The air left my lungs. I sank to the floor, the phone still clutched in my hand, the light illuminating the wreckage of my life. The silence of the house felt deafening, amplifying the screaming inside my head. This couldn't be real. This man, my man, couldn't be this person. But the words didn't lie. The timestamps didn't lie. The depth of the betrayal stared back at me, cold and stark on the glowing screen. I stayed there for a long time, the cold floor seeping into my bones, the reality of what I had found settling over me like a shroud. When I confronted him, the man I thought I knew vanished completely. I expected remorse, shame, maybe even desperate apologies. What I got was annoyance, a tired sigh, as if I were the problem for discovering his secret. I showed him the phone, the messages. My voice shook as I spoke, tears streaming down my face. I managed to choke out the words, "What is this, John? How could you?" He looked at the screen, then at me. He didn't flinch. He didn't look ashamed. He looked inconvenienced. He ran a hand through his hair, a gesture of impatience I knew well. Then he delivered the line that would forever echo in my memory, the line that stripped away any remaining shred of hope or understanding. "Oh, come on," he said, his voice flat, dismissive. "Everyone cheats." The words hung in the air between us, heavy and toxic. Everyone cheats, not an excuse, not a confession, but a statement of supposed fact. A justification. A way to normalize the abnormal, to make his betrayal seem mundane, inevitable even. As if my pain, my shock, my shattered trust were somehow naive, childish. Because, you see, everyone does it. It's just the way the world works. Get over it. That was the moment everything shifted. The tears stopped. The raw, bleeding wound of betrayal was still there, but something hard and cold began to form around it. Anger, yes, but also a chilling clarity. Everyone cheats in his world. Maybe they did. In his entitled, arrogant world, perhaps loyalty was a quaint, outdated notion. But that wasn't my world. And he had dragged his toxic reality into mine and expected me to just accept it. My initial struggles were pathetic. I pleaded. I cried. I tried to understand. I asked him why, reaching for a reason that could somehow make sense of the senseless. His answers were vague, deflective, circling back to that same core of casual indifference. It didn't mean anything. It was just sex. You're overreacting. Every word was another stone thrown at the already fragile structure of my heart. I felt like I was drowning, flailing in a sea of his lies and my own pain, with no shore in sight. I talked to a few friends, trying to articulate the depth of the wound, the chilling casualness of his confession. Some offered platitudes. Men will be men. Maybe you can work through it. Just focus on yourself. Their words, meant to comfort, felt hollow, inadequate. They didn't grasp the fundamental violation, the way he had not just cheated, but dismissed my entire reality with 5 flippant words. They saw infidelity. I saw the total collapse of a person's character, exposed like a raw nerve. I felt increasingly isolated. The pain was a physical weight pressing down on my chest, making it hard to breathe. Eating felt impossible, sleep a distant memory. The house, once a sanctuary, felt like a cage. Every object, every corner, held a memory of a time when I believed in the man who lived there, a time before I knew he was capable of such calculated deceit and casual cruelty. I walked through rooms that felt both familiar and utterly alien, haunted by the ghost of the life I thought I had. I tried to talk to him again, to reason, to appeal to whatever humanity might be left. "John," I said, my voice hoarse from crying, "how can you say everyone cheats? Do you really believe that? Do you think that makes this okay?" He shrugged, a dismissive flick of his shoulders. "It's just the way it is. People have needs. It's not a big deal." Not a big deal. My world imploded, and it was not a big deal. That was the moment the shift truly solidified. The victimhood began to drain away, replaced by something cold and hard. The hurt was still there, a deep ache, but it was overlaid with a layer of ice. If this wasn't a big deal to him, if he truly believed this was normal, acceptable behavior, then reasoning was useless. Appealing to his conscience was pointless. He didn't have one. Not in the way I understood it. He saw the world as a transaction, where loyalty was a negotiable term, easily discarded when inconvenient. He saw people, including me, as pieces on a chessboard, to be moved and manipulated for his own gratification. The pain he caused was irrelevant because, well, everyone cheats. It was a get-out-of-jail-free card for every moral failing, every lie, every act of betrayal. It excused everything. And that's when the thought, quiet at first, began to grow. If he lived in a world where actions had no real consequences, where fundamental trust was meaningless, where his behavior was excused by a cynical worldview, maybe it was time to introduce him to a different reality. My reality. A reality where actions did have consequences, where betraying trust came with a cost. The midpoint shift was this. I stopped asking why he did it and started focusing on what I would do about it. I stopped trying to understand him and started understanding myself. My pain was valid. My anger was justified. And his dismissal was an insult I was no longer willing to swallow. The idea of just walking away, licking my wounds in private, felt unsatisfying, like letting him get away with it, allowing his cynical view to win. He thought he could shatter my world and face no repercussions beyond a messy divorce. He could probably smooth-talk his way through. He thought he held all the power. He was wrong. The crisis deepened as I began to plan. Not a plan for reconciliation. A plan for something else entirely. Something that felt both terrifying and exhilarating. The house, once my sanctuary, became a battleground. Living with him, knowing what I knew, knowing what I was contemplating, was a constant performance. I had to hide my true feelings, my growing resolve, the cold calculation that was replacing the raw emotion. I smiled when I didn't feel like it, made small talk, went through the motions of our life while secretly gathering intelligence. I spent hours online, learning about digital forensics, data recovery, anything that could help me find every single scrap of evidence. I went back through old bills, bank statements, emails, looking for inconsistencies, for clues he might have left behind. The "everyone cheats" line kept playing in my head, a distorted mantra that fueled my resolve. If he thought deceit was the currency of relationships, fine. I could play that game too. But I would play it better. What I discovered wasn't just about the affair. The messages didn't just detail their sordid rendezvous. They were filled with careless talk, casual confessions, throwaway lines that, when pieced together with other information I was finding, painted a much larger, more disturbing picture. There were mentions of money, of deals, of keeping things quiet from his family. I started cross-referencing dates, times, locations from the messages with our shared calendar, with his work travel, with family events. A chilling pattern began to emerge. The affair wasn't just a spontaneous act of lust. It was a distraction. A cover. He had been using his late nights at work and business trips as alibis not just for the affair, but for something else entirely. Something financial. Something involving his family's business, the one he was set to inherit a significant stake in. He was diverting funds, making shady deals on the side, using the affair as a convenient excuse for his unavailability and secretive behavior. Everyone cheats wasn't just about justifying infidelity. It was a smokescreen for a much deeper, more damaging betrayal. He was betraying his family, his future, his entire reputation, and using the affair as a shield. This realization was the true deepening crisis. It wasn't just about my broken heart anymore. It was about exposing a potentially criminal enterprise, dismantling not just our marriage, but his entire carefully constructed life of deceit. The stakes were suddenly astronomical. This wasn't just revenge, it was justice. But the fear was immense. Could I really do this? Could I stand up to a man who is not just a liar and a cheat, but a potential fraudster? What if I failed? What if he turned it back on me? What if I lost everything in the process? Not just the marriage, but my own peace, my own reputation. I felt utterly alone in this clandestine war. I couldn't tell my friends the full extent of what I was uncovering. It was too dangerous, too complex. I hired a lawyer, discreetly, without his knowledge, presenting the information piece by piece, watching her eyes widen as the puzzle came together. She confirmed my fears. This wasn't just infidelity. This was serious. This could ruin him. The internal conflict was a constant, draining battle. One part of me craved peace, the simple act of walking away from the mess, finding a quiet corner to heal. The other part, the part forged in the fires of his casual cruelty and cynical dismissal, demanded retribution. Not just pain for pain, but exposure. He believed he was untouchable, that his actions existed in a vacuum where consequences didn't apply, shielded by his smooth words and his family's blind trust. I needed to prove him wrong. I needed to show him that the truth, weaponized correctly, could be the most devastating force of all. The turning point came on a Tuesday morning. I had everything. The screenshots of the affair messages, damning enough on their own. But I also had copies of bank statements showing unusual transfers, emails with cryptic language about deals and percentages, timelines that proved his business trips coincided perfectly with major financial discrepancies and meetings with people who had nothing to do with his actual work. I had built a case, a narrative woven from his own careless words and actions, proving not just the cheating, but the financial malfeasance he was hiding. And I knew exactly where to send it. Not just to his work. Not just to the other woman, though believe me, I considered it. Not just to a lawyer. I needed to hit him where he lived, where his shield was strongest, where his entitlement was bred and nurtured. I needed to send it to the source of his confidence, the people he thought would always protect him, the people he was also betraying. His family. I opened the family group chat. I had been a quiet member for years, posting occasional holiday greetings, wedding photos, benign updates. It was a hub of family gossip, announcements, and unwavering loyalty to John, the golden boy, the successful son and brother. Sending it here wasn't just about shaming him, it was about dismantling the very foundation of his privilege and exposing the rot beneath the polished surface to the people whose good opinion mattered to him most, the people whose resources he was exploiting. This wasn't just about our marriage. It was about the legacy he was jeopardizing, the trust he was shattering within his own bloodline. This was the twist. He thought his biggest problem was getting caught cheating. His real problem was that his cheating provided the breadcrumbs I followed to uncover the real betrayal, the one that would cost him everything his family name represented. My finger hovered over the send button. My heart hammered against my ribs. This was it. There was no going back. A wave of nausea washed over me. What if I was wrong? What if they didn't believe me? What if they circled the wagons around him and turned on me? Doubt, a venomous snake, whispered in my ear. But then I saw his face in my mind, heard his voice. Everyone cheats, and the cold resolve returned, hard and sharp. He had tried to shrink my pain, my worth, our entire relationship, down to a cynical cliché. He had tried to make me feel small and naive for expecting loyalty.
No.
Not anymore. It was time for him to see just how big the consequences could be when you treated people like disposable objects and built your life on a foundation of lies. I took a deep breath, a long, slow inhale that felt like gathering every fragmented piece of my strength. My finger pressed down.
Send.
The climax was instantaneous. The message disappeared into the digital ether, carrying the weight of shattered trust and undeniable evidence. The package I sent included not just the most incriminating screenshots of the affair messages, time-stamped and irrefutable, but also a concisely written summary, referencing the dates and content of those messages, linking them directly to the dates and amounts of the suspicious financial transactions I had uncovered. I didn't need to explain everything. I just needed to provide the roadmap, the undeniable connections that would force them to look deeper, to ask questions he couldn't smooth-talk his way out of. The affair was the spark. The financial fraud was the explosion. His phone started buzzing almost immediately. A few seconds later, the sound ripped through the air. That raw, desperate scream I heard from the kitchen doorway. He came running, phone in hand, face contorted in disbelief and terror. He saw me standing there, watching him, my face calm, devoid of the tears and pleading he was used to.
What?
What did you do? He shrieked, holding up the phone, the family chat notifications blazing. What did you send? His family was already erupting. The sheer volume of messages was overwhelming. They weren't just shocked about the cheating. Their messages contained words like money, investments, legal. Fraud. The bomb had landed. I looked at him, at the man who had casually tossed aside my trust, who thought my pain was not a big deal, who believed his deceit existed without consequence. And I finally understood the true power of the truth. It wasn't just about revealing a secret. It was about dismantling a lie, brick by carefully constructed brick. My voice was steady, quiet, a stark contrast to his panic. I met his eyes, cold and unwavering. You said everyone cheats, John. I said, repeating his own words back to him, letting them hang in the air like a judgment. Maybe they do, but not everyone gets caught the way you just did. His face went white. He stumbled back, leaning against the counter, the fight completely gone from him, replaced by sheer, unadulterated dread. He finally understood. This wasn't just about me leaving. This was about his family, his reputation, his future. The not a big deal had just become the biggest deal of his life. He was blindsided not just by the exposure of his affair, but by the realization that I had weaponized it to expose the rot beneath, the rot that threatened to contaminate his entire family system. He thought he was playing a small game of marital deceit. I showed him he was playing with fire in a room full of highly flammable family secrets. The aftermath was a whirlwind of chaos and cold, hard reality. The family chat became a battleground. His parents were devastated, not just by the infidelity, but by the implications of the financial mess. His siblings were furious, realizing he had jeopardized not just his own standing, but potentially theirs too, depending on the extent of his manipulations within the family business structure. Uncle David, who ran the family's legal affairs, was on the phone immediately, not with John, but demanding a meeting with me and my lawyer. The winning bigger wasn't just about getting back at him emotionally. It was tangible. The family, reeling from the revelations, froze his access to certain accounts and assets tied to the business and inheritance. The lawyer I had hired, initially for divorce proceedings, was now dealing with potential civil, maybe even criminal, charges related to the financial discrepancies the messages helped uncover. His carefully constructed life, built on a foundation of believing he was smarter than everyone else, immune to consequence, came crashing down around him. The family who he thought would always protect him were now the ones demanding answers, demanding accountability, horrified by what their golden boy had been doing right under their noses, using the affair as a convenient blind spot. John tried to fight back, to spin the narrative, to claim I was crazy, vindictive, making things up. But the screenshots were there. The dates matched the financial records. The connections were undeniable. The family saw the pattern of deceit, the casual lies in the messages about where he was and who he was with, and saw how it mirrored the financial cover-ups. They saw the entitlement, the same entitlement he displayed to me with everyone cheats, now aimed at them. Their trust, which he had taken for granted for decades, evaporated. That was the ultimate victory. He lost the unshakable confidence of the people he relied on most, the people who had always cushioned his falls. For me, the emotional fallout was complex. There was a cold satisfaction, a sense of vindication. I had faced his contempt and turned it back on him, magnified 1,000 times. But there was also profound sadness. Sadness for the life I had lost, for the man I thought I married, for the years I had invested in a lie. The house, once a symbol of our future, became a stark reminder of the past, of the secrets it held. The divorce proceedings were swift and brutal. He had no leverage, no ground to stand on. The evidence was overwhelming. The family, wanting to contain the damage and distance themselves from his actions, put pressure on him to settle quickly and quietly. I got the house, a fair settlement that reflected not just the marital assets, but the financial mess he had created and the potential legal battles he now faced with his own family. In the quiet after the storm, the silence felt different. It wasn't the tense, watchful silence of suspicion anymore. It was the silence of emptiness, but also of peace. The anger slowly began to subside, leaving behind a raw, aching space. Healing wasn't linear. There were days the pain would return, sharp and unexpected, a reminder of the scar left by the betrayal. But there were also days filled with a quiet strength, a knowledge that I had faced the worst and survived. I learned that trust, once broken so fundamentally, can never be fully rebuilt with that person. I learned that sometimes, the most powerful response to casual cruelty isn't forgiveness or silent suffering, but truth, delivered strategically. I learned that the world isn't a place where everyone cheats, and expecting loyalty isn't naive. It's a fundamental human need. His cynicism hadn't contaminated me. It had clarified what I truly valued. Rebuilding my life felt like starting from scratch, but this time, the foundation was honest, built on my own strength and resilience. The bitterness lingered, a faint aftertaste, but it didn't define me. What defined me was the quiet resolve forged in the fire of betrayal, the strength I found when I realized the person I could trust most in the world was myself. If this story hit close to home, I'd love to hear your version in the comments. Thanks for being here. Subscribing helps bring more of these to life.